Hello everyone, and welcome to my YNR Official 24 channel. Claire being pregnant with Holden's child detonates across Genoa City like an emotional earthquake, sending shockwaves through every relationship, every alliance, and every carefully guarded secret, because nothing in this town ever exists in isolation, and this revelation, raw, fragile, undeniable, forces Kyle Abbott into a position he never expected to occupy. The final arbiter of a future that isn't entirely his to control, yet cannot move forward without his blessing, his refusal, or his sacrifice. As Claire stands trembling in the glow of the Abbott living room chandelier, one hand protectively pressed against her stomach, the other clutching the edge of the sofa as if the room itself might tip over, her voice cracking when she admits the truth she has been carrying alone for weeks, that she is pregnant, that the child is Holden's, and that no matter how hard she tried to deny it, no matter how many times she told herself it would all go away if she stayed silent, the truth has a way of clawing its way into the light, especially in Genoa City, where secrets don't stay buried. They metastasize, and Kyle's reaction is immediate but unreadable, his face a battlefield of shock, betrayal, fear, and something else far more dangerous: calculation. Because Kyle Abbott has learned the hard way that emotion without strategy is a liability. And yet this moment refuses to be reduced to numbers or outcomes, as Holden's name hangs in the air like poison, a man Kyle never fully trusted, a man whose charm always felt rehearsed, whose loyalty came with conditions, and whose history with Claire was never as innocent as Kyle wanted to believe. And now the past has quite literally come back with a heartbeat, forcing Kyle to confront not just Claire's choices, but his own blind spots, his own failure to see how lonely she was, how vulnerable, how easily Holden slipped into the cracks of her life when Kyle was consumed by Abbott legacy battles and power struggles that suddenly feel embarrassingly small in the face of a child, because a baby changes everything in this town, rewriting alliances, rewriting morals, rewriting who gets to claim the future, and Claire knows it, which is why she doesn't beg, doesn't plead, but instead meets Kyle's gaze with a quiet, devastating honesty, telling him she isn't asking for forgiveness, she's asking for clarity, because she cannot do this alone. And Kyle's silence stretches until it becomes unbearable, until it's interrupted by the echo of footsteps in the hallway and the unspoken understanding that once this secret is out, it will never be contained again, not from Summer, not from Jack, not from Victor Newman, who will undoubtedly see this child not as a miracle, but as leverage, because Victor always sees leverage first, and the thought alone makes Kyle's jaw tighten, his protective instincts flaring even as his heart fractures. Because no matter how angry he is, the idea of this baby being pulled into the endless Newman-Abbott chess match feels unforgivable, and yet Holden's involvement makes that outcome almost inevitable, especially when Holden himself finally appears, summoned not by invitation but by the gravitational pull of scandal, walking into the Abbott mansion with that same infuriating confidence, congratulating Claire as if the room isn't thick with tension, as if Kyle isn't standing there like a man deciding whether to burn a bridge or blow it up entirely. And when Holden confirms he knows, that he's known for days, that he intends to be part of the child's life, the temperature drops several degrees, because intention in Genoa City is rarely benign, and Kyle doesn't miss the subtle way Holden emphasizes "my child," a territorial claim that sends Kyle over the edge, his voice sharp as he demands to know whether Holden planned this, whether Claire was manipulated, whether any of this was real or just another long con, and Claire's response is explosive in its simplicity as she snaps that the baby is real, her feelings were real, and whatever mistakes she made, they are hers, not Holden's, not Kyle's, and certainly not something to be weaponized, a declaration that silences the room and forces Kyle to reckon with a truth he's been avoiding, that control has always been his default, that he decides outcomes, that people orbit his choices, and now here is something that refuses to be controlled, a life that exists regardless of his approval, and yet everyone waits for him to speak, because Kyle Abbott's voice carries weight, because his acceptance or rejection will shape how this story unfolds, whether Claire becomes supported or ostracized, whether the child is protected or exploited, whether Holden gains legitimacy or is shut out, and Kyle feels the crushing pressure of legacy bearing down on him. Jack's teachings echoing in his head about responsibility and compassion, about choosing people over pride, while Summer's potential reaction flickers through his mind like a warning flare, because Summer will not take this lightly, and the thought of losing her, of fracturing yet another relationship, adds another layer of agony to an already impossible decision. And yet amid the chaos, something unexpectedly tender breaks through as Kyle looks at Claire not as a problem to solve, but as a woman terrified of the future. And in that moment he sees not betrayal but humanity, not failure but fear, and it disarms him, forcing him to confront the possibility that doing the right thing might mean doing the hardest thing, as Victor Newman's inevitable interference looms like a storm cloud on the horizon, as Nikki's whispered concerns and Jack's measured counsel wait just outside the door, as Genoa City's rumor mill prepares to grind this revelation into headlines and half-truths, and Kyle finally speaks, his words slow, deliberate, carrying the weight of finality as he says that no matter what happens between them, no matter how complicated the past becomes, this child will not be used as a pawn, that Claire will not face this alone, and that Holden's involvement will come with boundaries drawn in steel, because Kyle Abbott will not allow history to repeat itself, a declaration that stuns Holden, softens Claire into tears, and sets the stage for a future no one can fully predict, because in Genoa City, choosing compassion is never the end of the story. It's only the beginning of a far more dangerous chapter, one where love, power, and legacy collide around a child who hasn't even been born yet. And as Kyle turns toward the window, looking out at a city that has taken so much from him and given him just enough hope to keep fighting, the final truth settles in with chilling clarity. This baby will change everything, and Kyle Abbott has just made the kind of choice that creates enemies, reshapes families, and ensures that nothing, absolutely nothing, will ever be the same again. Because in Genoa City, declarations like Kyle's never land softly. They reverberate, and the moment his words settle into the room, the consequences begin unfolding with ruthless precision, starting with Holden's expression tightening just enough to reveal the crack beneath his polished exterior, because boundaries are the one thing he has never respected, and Kyle drawing them so publicly is both an insult and a challenge. A line in the sand that Holden immediately begins calculating how to cross without appearing to step over it, while Claire, overwhelmed by relief and terror in equal measure, sinks into the sofa as if her body has finally acknowledged the weight she's been carrying, tears spilling freely now that she's no longer alone, though she knows better than anyone that protection in Genoa City is conditional, fragile, and often short-lived, and as Kyle kneels in front of her, lowering his voice so only she can hear, promising that whatever happens, next they will face it head-on. The intimacy of the moment is not lost on Holden, whose jaw clenches at being excluded from a conversation about a child he insists is his, a claim that will soon echo through courtrooms, boardrooms, and whispered conversations at Society and Crimson Lights, because the news spreads fast, faster than Claire ever imagined, faster than Kyle hoped, and by the next morning Genoa City is already buzzing. Summer sensing something is wrong before anyone says a word, her instincts honed by years of betrayal and survival, and when she confronts Kyle, demanding the truth, the fallout is immediate and volcanic, her disbelief turning to anger, then hurt, then a chilling calm that scares him more than shouting ever could, because Summer doesn't explode when she realizes Claire is pregnant with Holden's child. She withdraws, her eyes hardening as she asks Kyle the one question he can't answer cleanly. Why are you protecting her more than me? And the silence that follows is deafening. Because Kyle knows that intention doesn't erase impact, and Summer's pain is real, justified, and now permanently entangled with a baby that represents everything she fears losing, and as she walks away, refusing to be reassured, Kyle feels the cost of his decision settling in his chest like a stone, even as Jack pulls him aside to offer measured support, reminding him that leadership is rarely rewarded immediately, that doing the right thing often means standing alone, advice that feels hollow. When Kyle watches the woman he loves retreat behind walls he helped build, while across town Victor Newman receives the news with a familiar, dangerous smile, already mapping how Holden's child could be leveraged, how Abbott morality could be tested, how Kyle's newfound compassion could be turned into weakness, because Victor never underestimates a baby's power in this town, and he wastes no time summoning Holden, offering veiled congratulations and unsolicited guidance, subtly reminding him that fathers who align with Newman interests tend to fare much better than those who don't, a conversation Holden listens to with rapt attention, because while he bristles at Kyle's authority, he understands the value of Victor's backing, even as he insists that his only concern is Claire and the child, words that ring false to anyone who knows him, including Nikki, who warns Victor not to meddle with an unborn life, only to be brushed aside as Victor insists that the game has already begun. And Claire feels that truth viscerally when she realizes her pregnancy has turned her into a focal point, people watching her, questioning her motives, speculating about paternity timelines and future custody battles, the scrutiny suffocating, pushing her to the brink as she wonders whether bringing this child into such chaos is fair. Doubts she voices late one night to Kyle as they sit in the dimly lit Abbott living room, the mansion suddenly feeling less like a sanctuary and more like a stage. And Kyle listens, truly listens, admitting his own fears, his guilt over dragging her deeper into a world that devours innocence, and in that vulnerable exchange something shifts, not romance, not forgiveness, but trust, the kind that forms under pressure, the kind that could anchor them through what's coming, because what's coming is inevitable, unavoidable, and explosive. Starting with Holden filing preliminary legal paperwork to establish his rights as the child's father, a move that blindsides Claire and infuriates Kyle, confirming his worst suspicions that Holden's concern has always been as much about control as care, and as lawyers are consulted and lines are drawn, Summer watches from the sidelines, her hurt hardening into resolve as she decides she will not be collateral damage in someone else's crisis, aligning herself more closely with Victor than Kyle realizes. A shift that will have consequences of its own, while Jack struggles to keep Abbott Enterprises insulated. From the scandal, investors whispering, board members questioning Kyle's judgment, and yet despite the mounting pressure, Kyle refuses to retreat, publicly supporting Claire when rumors turn cruel, when blame is assigned disproportionately, when the narrative threatens to paint her as reckless or manipulative, a stance that earns him unexpected respect from some quarters and deep resentment from others, including Holden, who accuses Kyle of trying to erase him from his own child's life. A confrontation that culminates in a tense, unforgettable showdown where Kyle makes it clear that fatherhood is about presence, not possession, about responsibility, not entitlement, words that hit Holden harder than he expects, stirring something unresolved, something tied to his own past, his own failures, and for a brief moment it seems possible that Holden might choose a different path, might step back, might prioritize the child over the power plays. But Genoa City rarely rewards restraint, and when Victor applies pressure, offering opportunities Holden can't resist, the pull proves too strong, setting the stage for an inevitable clash that will test everyone's limits. While Claire's pregnancy progresses, each milestone a reminder of what's at stake, each ultrasound photo both a source of joy and a trigger for anxiety, and when Claire places that grainy image into Kyle's hand, thanking him for standing by her when he didn't have to, the moment is profoundly intimate, underscored by the awareness that this child already has multiple futures vying for dominance, and Kyle, staring at the tiny flicker of a heartbeat, realizes that his final say wasn't about control after all, it was about commitment, about choosing to be the kind of man who protects even when it costs him, a choice that will define him long after the headlines fade, because as Genoa City braces for the next wave of fallout, custody battles, shifting loyalties, romantic fractures, and power grabs, the truth becomes impossible to ignore. This baby is no longer just Claire's or Holden's or even Kyle's concern. It is a catalyst, a reckoning, and the beginning of a story that will rewrite the rules for everyone involved, ensuring that love will be tested, alliances will shatter, and the question of who truly has the final say will haunt Genoa City for years to come, long after the child at the center of it all takes their first breath. The revelation hit like a lightning bolt across the Newman and Abbott families, a truth so explosive that it left everyone in the room reeling, their thoughts spinning wildly in every possible direction. And yet, amidst the chaos and disbelief, one undeniable fact crystallized. Claire was pregnant, and Holden was the father. The air in the room felt thick with tension, heavy with unspoken fears, guilt, and anticipation, each heartbeat echoing like a drum of impending doom. Claire herself stood frozen, her hand instinctively cradling the small swell of her belly, her wide eyes darting nervously from one familiar face to another, as if seeking refuge, understanding, or perhaps judgment, in the expressions of those around her. She knew that the news would not be received lightly. After all, Holden's tumultuous past, marked by secrets, betrayals, and manipulations, cast a shadow over everything he touched, and now, through her, that shadow extended into the very heart of her family's world. Kyle, standing a few feet away, became the center of attention not by choice, but by the unspoken power his position commanded. He had always been seen as the rational, fair-minded member of his family, the one who could mediate disputes, soothe wounds, and make decisions that carried the weight of moral and emotional authority, and now, faced with this revelation, all eyes naturally turned toward him. He could feel the pressure pressing down on him like a physical force, the weight of responsibility almost suffocating, knowing that his decision could irrevocably change the course of not just Claire's life, but the intricate web of relationships that bound together families, lovers, and rivals alike in Genoa City. Every mind in the room was spinning, some with fear, others with outrage, and yet others with a kind of grim anticipation. Sharon's face, taut with worry, betrayed a complex mixture of empathy for Claire, concern for the child, and underlying apprehension about how this revelation would affect the already fragile dynamics among the Newmans and Abbotts. Jack, as always, displayed a mask of stern composure, but the slight narrowing of his eyes, the barely perceptible tightening of his jaw, revealed that even he was grappling with the shock of the situation, questioning silently what Holden's motives might have been and what fallout could emerge from this tangled web of secrets, desires, and impulsive choices. Meanwhile, Phyllis, ever the keen observer and strategist, couldn't hide the flicker of scheming calculation that danced across her features. To her, every revelation was an opportunity, every crisis a potential foothold in a game she never hesitated to play, and now, with Claire carrying Holden's child, she could sense the potential leverage that might one day swing powerfully in her favor. Kyle, who had always struggled with the delicate balance between protecting those he loved and making the right decision in the eyes of everyone else, felt the burden pressing on him in an almost tangible way. His thoughts were a whirlwind of conflicting loyalties and moral quandaries, the desire to shield Claire from unnecessary pain, the responsibility to consider what was best for the unborn child, the recognition of Holden's undeniable flaws and history of deceit, and the understanding that the ripple effects of his judgment would reverberate far beyond the immediate family circle. He could see Claire's fear mirrored in the eyes of the people around them, the unspoken questioning, the silent judgment, the intense curiosity, and he understood, painfully, that his decision would be dissected and debated, perhaps even resented, by those whose opinions he valued most. And yet, despite the chaos, Kyle felt a clarity that only came when one recognized that some choices, no matter how fraught with uncertainty, must be made with both courage and conviction. He looked at Claire, saw the vulnerability etched into her face, and felt the weight of the trust she had implicitly placed in him. As the room seemed to shrink around them, voices began to rise, overlapping in a cacophony of emotions that ranged from anger to concern, from pleading to condemnation. Victor, always the patriarch, struggled to mask his fury, his tone alternating between sharp admonishment and desperate concern, a man caught between his instinct to control and his fear of losing influence over a situation that, like so many others, threatened to spiral beyond his command. "How could this happen?" he demanded, the words cutting through the tension like a knife. "Holden, I warned you." "Claire, how could you allow this?" The questions hung in the air, heavy with accusation, yet they were not intended to elicit answers. They were a release of the storm that had been brewing for weeks, a torrent of fear, disappointment, and incredulity that needed a target. Claire's lips trembled, her voice barely audible as she tried to explain, to justify, to soothe the hurt, yet every word seemed to vanish into the charged atmosphere, swallowed by the magnitude of the revelation itself. Kyle stepped forward, feeling the eyes of every person in the room locking on.